Good evening, everyone. James Hancock here. I just got out of seeing Taika Waititi's new film, Jojo Rabbit, and I wanted to share a quick review. I'll refrain from spoilers initially and won't discuss any specifics until I give you fair warning, but there are a few scenes and beats that are so memorable that it's not possible for me to review the film and not discuss them. But if you're unfamiliar with the premise, Taika Waititi adapted the film from a novel by Christine Lunens. The story is about a 10-year-old boy named Jojo living in Berlin in the closing days of World War II. Jojo has completely bought into each and every aspect of Nazi propaganda, so much so that Hitler, played hilariously by Taika Waititi himself, has become Jojo's permanent imaginary friend in all of his adventures. But Jojo's world is turned on its head when he learns that his mother is hiding a young Jewish girl, Elsa, in the walls of their home. In a classic coming-of-age scenario, Jojo slowly but surely learns to question everything he's been taught by the Nazis and comes to love Elsa as a sister, all while the Allied powers move in for the final assault on Berlin. Now, I won't argue that this is Taika Waititi's best movie, nor his funniest. However, the movie has plenty of laughs and lots of heart. I was unexpectedly moved by this film, so much so that I nearly started crying like a baby as I walked out of the theater, feeling waves upon waves of chills. And these chills didn't stop for several minutes, and every time I thought about the final shot of the movie, the chills would come back. I was expecting Taika Waititi's signature brand of humor, which I got in abundance in the earlier parts of the movie, but I was totally unprepared for Taika Waititi's ability as a director to nimbly tap dance between different tones and moods. When the film is funny, you'll laugh, but when it's sad or heartwarming, there's a very good chance you might start sobbing like several people beside me who were completely wrecked by one scene that I'll get into when I discuss spoilers. But before I go any further, I need to say a few words about some of the ridiculous things being said online about this movie. Case in point, that somehow this movie's dangerous because critics think it's going to make people want to become Nazis. And I should add that these are the same writers who thought that the movie Joker was going to inspire people to go on these massive killing rampages. And so far, Jojo Rabbit has been ripped to shreds by a lot of critics, in some cases before they even saw the movie, which always makes me raise my eyebrows suspiciously. It seems as if this pack of utterly humorless joy kills are opposed even to the idea that Taika Waititi made a comedy about this particular topic, irrespective of how he handled the story. And for people who are paid to write about movies, they seem to know very little about movies themselves. Some of the greatest humorists and filmmakers in all of film history have made comedies about Nazis over and over again. Whether you're talking about Charlie Chaplin in his film The Great Dictator, Ernst Lubitsch in his film To Be or Not to Be, or Mel Brooks and The Producers, one of the funniest movies ever made. People have been making comedies about Nazis ever since the Nazis first goose-stepped their way into power. It reminds me a little bit of a scenario where a writer asked Ricky Gervais if there were any topics that he considered to be off-limits to joke about, to which Ricky Gervais wisely replied, "Are there any topics that you wouldn't write about?" For my part, I'm really looking forward to seeing what audiences think of Jojo Rabbit, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see yet another example of a massive divide between viewers and the critical community. This phenomenon appears to be happening on such a regular basis that it makes me wonder what role traditional critics will continue to play in our culture if their transparent bias and agendas leave them permanently at odds with the folks that actually pay to go see movies. In any event, enough lecturing on my part. I think Jojo Rabbit is a very solid movie. This is a movie about love and humanity, and I think anytime a filmmaker finds a way to explore these ideas with a lighthearted touch, that's always worth applauding. If I were to criticize the film, I'd say it took a little while to find its second gear, and I worried that the movie was going to wallow in silliness a little bit too long. For my money, I don't think it's up there with Taika Waititi's earlier films like The Hunt for the Wilder People or Thor Ragnarok, but I think people should definitely give the movie a chance and form their own opinions. But now I'm going to discuss the movie with a little more specificity, so if you're not into spoilers, this is the moment to bail out. So let's start with the comedy. Taika Waititi is so damn funny as Hitler that I'm a little bit torn over whether or not I'd like to see him direct more movies or perform in them. Hopefully we'll continue to get the best of both worlds, where he gives himself a lot of great roles in the movies he's directing, like Korg in his movies from Marvel. But as funny as he is in the movie, my favorite comedic beats come from a young actor named Archie Yates, who plays Jojo's friend Yorkie. Even as Nazis are being mowed down all around them toward the end of the film, Yorkie's strangely unkillable, and he has my favorite line of the movie when he's repeating some of the propaganda that he's heard about Russian and American soldiers and their alleged interest in having sex with dogs. Like any little kid who loves animals and loves dogs, Yorkie's absolutely terrified on behalf of all the dogs in Berlin. But Jojo has some great lines as well, like when Elsa accuses him of not really being a Nazi, whereupon the kid just starts swearing that he's massively into swastikas. Throughout the movie, he's always trying a little too hard to prove what an edge he has and that he's ready for combat. And this leads to his rather overzealous demonstration with a grenade, which leaves him scarred and disfigured over one half of his body. Actor Roman Griffin proves to be surprisingly up to the challenge of carrying the weight of the film on his shoulders. He has a lot of help from ScarJo, Rebel Wilson, Stephen Merchant, and Sam Rockwell, but this entire movie is from Jojo's perspective, and I was blown away by his ability to handle such a complicated range of emotions throughout the film. But the scene that just paved over me emotionally is when Jojo's walking through the city and abruptly learns that his mother's been hanged alongside other members of the resistance. But what's beautiful is how Taika Waititi chooses to handle the scene cinematically, giving us all the information in pictures as opposed to verbally. All we see is ScarJo's foot dangling into frame with its untied shoe. Jojo's inability to tie his shoes has always been a recurring thing between him and his mother. And we see Jojo finally gets over that hump as he's sobbing and tying his mother's shoelaces and then just hugging her legs in desperation. He's just completely, utterly inconsolable. And that was the moment that shattered so many audience members in the theater, and I could hear their audible sobs kind of echoing throughout the auditorium. As a filmmaker, Taika Waititi is clearly looking for new challenges and looking to spread his wings with new material. But if you prefer the silliness of his earlier movies like Eagle vs. Shark, you can still see that version of Taika Waititi on display in this movie. Like at one point, he superimposes a bunch of stop-motion butterflies dancing around inside of Jojo's stomach as he realizes that he's fallen in love with Elsa. And it reminded me of quite a bit of all the stop-motion fruit sequences, as well as the sleeping bag sequences in Eagle vs. Shark. But more importantly, I always like seeing filmmakers adding additional components to their bag of tricks. Don't be surprised that if in his next Marvel film, Thor: Love and Thunder, if Taika Waititi shows even further evidence of his evolution as a director. But I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I have to get up early and go see yet another movie, The Lighthouse. I was kind of weighing the pros and cons over which one I should see first, and I basically flipped a coin, but I am really looking forward to checking that out tomorrow morning. But I hope you enjoyed my review. If so, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. That's all very helpful to me. And if you want to talk more about Taika Waititi's movies, whether it's this one or any of his past work, hunt me down on Twitter at Colbrex. But can't thank you enough for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.